Hello, everyone. In this podcast, let us talk about the latest Jira Security Advisory. So, recently I came to know about this security advisory, which is basically a notice or a notification from Atlassian about this security vulnerability, which has affected quite a lot of Jira versions and also Jira data center version as well. So, in case you are using versions like 7.0, 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, and so on. In fact, quite a lot of Jira server versions are affected by this vulnerability. And so, what you can do about this security advisory from Atlassian? Well, if you are running the versions that are affected, you should plan to immediately upgrade to 7.6.14 or 7.13.5 or 8.0.3 or 8.1.2, or you can upgrade to 8.2.3. So before we talk about uh, these versions that you can upgrade to, let me briefly talk about the actual problem. So in Jira, there is a way to contact your administrator, and using this mechanism of using a form, basically contact the Jira administrator for some help, or maybe they just want to contact them for any reason. So there is a form that is usually disabled by default, and some people keep it enabled. They enable it. Maybe they want this mechanism to be open for any user so that they can give feedback or maybe they can raise a concern. So I believe this form is the problem, and this security as advisory that has been released is basically talking about a template injection in various resources, and the main resource that they're talking about is definitely this contact form for administrators. Now, if you are an enterprise, you are a big company, maybe in your case, upgrading Jira immediately is not feasible. So, what you can do, you can actually disable this form. That is number one. And if you go to the security advisory notification on the Atlassian website, just search Jira Security Advisory and read the latest July notification. You will be able to go through the workaround. And by the way, this workaround is a temporary workaround. It is not a permanent solution. You should ideally upgrade. But this workaround is talking about disabling this contact administrators form. And also at the same time, there is a path called as a secure slash admin slash send bulk mail exclamation mark default dot JSPA. So this is one endpoint that can also be blocked, maybe on your web server if you're using a reverse proxy, or if you're using a load balancer, or maybe in your Tomcat, you can just block this URL so that no one can actually access it, even if it is disabled in the application. But again, as I mentioned before, this is a temporary workaround. You should ideally plan to upgrade. You should upgrade if you can to one of these versions that I mentioned earlier. You can of course read about them, starting from 7.6 till 8.2.3. In fact, so there are 5 fixed Jira server and Jira data center versions that you can upgrade to. and this should be in your pipeline to upgrade as soon as possible, whenever you can. But do apply those workarounds. And I think it is a very important thing for any Jira administrator to keep an eye on these security advisories. Of course, you will come to know about these things eventually, but the sooner you come to know about these security vulnerabilities, these advisories, the sooner you will be able to plan your upgrade. So this is all I wanted to share in this podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. In this podcast, let us talk about different migration options in Jira. So, when you start using Jira, you may want to migrate your issues from your existing tool. Maybe you are already using some legacy tool, or maybe you have some data that you want to move or migrate to Jira, or maybe you already have a few Jira instances and maybe you want to consolidate them. In any case, you have to do some kind of migration where your main motive, your main goal is to basically move the data from one instance to another. And the source instance can be Jira, it can be any other tool, or it can be no tool at all. Maybe you are just starting to use Jira, and in that case, maybe there is no need to migrate. So let us say if you have to do some migration and you have different options, as I just mentioned. And in this podcast, I want to basically talk about these options, pros and cons, and if you are new to Jira or Atlassian tools, I think it will probably help you in understanding these different options. So in Jira, you also have some inbuilt capability that you can always use. So let us talk about different options first. So you have the option to migrate data to Jira using CSV. So Jira comes with a CSV import utility or a tool that you can use. There is also this possibility of doing a project import. So this project import is again a native feature in Jira where you can basically take a dump of your source Jira instance. Let us say you want to migrate from one Jira instance to another instance, and you want to do it selectively for maybe few projects, not really everything in one go. So you can use the project import feature, which is useful because it is native and you don't really have to do anything apart from just doing some configurations and making sure that you have some configurations in place. Let us talk about that as well in a moment. So apart from doing CSV and project import, you can also use Jira REST API because you can always push data into your Jira instance by building your own interface, and you can basically utilize the Jira REST API. So apart from these three options, and these three options are native, you can also use some add-ons or plugins or apps that can also help you in doing migration. And by the way, I'm talking about the most common ways. These are not the final, or I should mention that these are not the only options to migrate. You have quite a lot of ways, but these are mostly used by people. When I talk about the inbuilt migration capabilities, you also have some other utilities that you can find in your Jira instance. You can go to your Jira administration section and you can take a look at those inbuilt capabilities, inbuilt importers. For example, apart from CSV, there are some other importers that will help you in doing migration. But I'm not really talking about those importers because even if you use those importers, they may not always work perfectly. Eventually, you want to process some data and you want to make sure that your fields, your workflows, everything is in place, and you need to do some mapping. And I'm using the CSV import. I'm mentioning the CSV import because it is uh, quite simple. It usually works. Not always the first time, but if you set up your file properly and if you do the mappings, it is quite an easy way to migrate data using CSV. So apart from CSV in the project import, I was talking about some add-ons that can also do the migration for you. So there are some add-ons like Project Configurator, Configuration Manager that can also do the migration for you. And these two add-ons are different from CSV and Project Import because they are also able to migrate your configurations in Jira. So when we talk about Jira, you have, of course, your data, which is nothing but your project and the issues under it, but you also have your configurations like workflows, custom fields, issue types, permissions, notifications, and quite a lot of configurations. And when you're using the CSV or the project import, they these two utilities will only migrate the issues for you. It won't really migrate the workflows. So in cases where you are migrating from one Jira instance to another Jira instance, maybe you also want to migrate the configurations so that for the users, they don't really feel lot of differences when they move to a different instance. Maybe for some reason, if you want to also make sure that your configurations are moved, then in that case you can either recreate or redo those modifications, those customizations when you have maybe few projects. But if you have been using Jira for a long time and you want to migrate from Jira to Jira, then maybe you need a tool to migrate the configurations. And in that case, you need to use these apps like Configuration Manager or Project Configurator. So these two apps are quite good. They can migrate the configurations, data related to the project. They can also migrate the actual issues. Uh, that is definitely your aim. And apart from these two apps, or apart from these methods where you can migrate the issues, you can also do a syncing. So there are some apps that can also help you sync the issues between two Jira instances. For example, maybe you have two Jira instances in your organization and you want to do some migration, but for some reason, if you think you cannot afford a downtime or you don't really want to disrupt the service for the end users, you can sync the issues between two Jira instances, and once everything is synced, you can simply switch over, and that can only be possible when you're using some live syncing. So there are some apps like Excelate and Backbone that will help you doing syncing. And of course, when you're talking about Backbone and Excelate, there are some other use cases because maybe you have two Jira instances, maybe you have a need to sync the issues between two Jira instances. So in that case, you can take a look at these apps. So let us talk about the pros and cons. So when we talk about the CSV import and the project import itself, as I mentioned earlier, it won't really migrate your actual configurations. So that is definitely that may not be always good for all the organizations. It can also it can definitely migrate the issues, but it usually requires a lot of effort when you're using CSV import feature because you have to make sure that all the configurations are in place. You have to make sure that all the fields are mapped. You have to make sure the fields in the CSV, they are formatted in the right way, like the date format, or maybe you want to create some links, you want to create some subtasks, you want to add a comment. So you have to format your CSV properly so that it can be imported. At the same time, when you're using project import feature, it will only work when you have the configurations already in place. So that is something that you need to be aware of. So in both these methods, there will be some kind of a downtime for the end user. Of course, you can plan this activity on a weekend, but still there is a downtime. There will be some time that is needed for doing the actual migration, and during that time, maybe you can put your source instance, or maybe if you're using CSV, maybe you're migrating from a different tool. It has to be in a read-only mode so that there is no new delta or new issues or tickets added in your source instance or tool. But the good thing is that it is native. You're not really paying for any additional app or add-on, and it is not extremely. I mean, if you have the configurations in place already, it is not extremely difficult to use these two features. Let's talk about the REST API. So REST API is again quite powerful. You can create your own sync. You can also programmatically push data into Jira, and it works really well. But again, there is a need to do some development. You need to build the interface, and there is a development effort required in this particular case as well. Although it is quite configurable, or I should say flexible, you can build this interface to push data into Jira. You can do some data manipulation in between if you have to. And this is basically more of a development effort in case of REST API. So if we talk about the configuration manager and project configurator, these two add-ons, again, they are add-ons. You need to purchase them. So there is a cost involved. In terms of what all it can migrate, I think both project configurator and configuration manager, both of these add-ons can migrate most of the things for you. So in case you're looking for a consolidation, in case you're looking for moving the configurations completely, and you want this experience for the user to be same on the new system, then I think project configurator and configuration manager, they are really good add-ons. These two add-ons can also move the user configurations like filters and dashboards, and these two apps can also move data of some of the apps, not all of the apps, but some of the apps. You can also use the REST API. So these two add-ons also comes with some kind of interface that you can use. So you can always do some kind of an automation. And the good thing about these two add-ons is that if you have multiple Jira, like in case you have, like, let us say, a production instance of Jira, you have a staging instance, you have a test instance, and you're doing some kind of testing. Let us say you want to create some new configurations and you want to first test those configurations before doing it on the live instance. So you can use project configurator to basically, or maybe configuration manager to basically push the configurations from one instance to another instance. So this is definitely a great advantage, because natively you can't really move configurations in Jira. You can do few things like import the workflow, but not really much. So talking about the cons of doing migration using project configurator and configuration manager, you of course need to do some work. Again, it is a paid app and it requires some configurations. In case you're looking for zero downtime or no disruption for the end user, then it might not be the right add-on, because there will be some downtime. You need to ask your users, okay, let us not use Jira for maybe 1 or 2 days. You can definitely do it on weekends, but some people might be working on weekends. Maybe there is some automation already in place that is reading the system or doing something with the instance. So we need to basically stop using Jira, or maybe move it to read-only mode by changing the permission schemes in your projects. And you need to plan it properly, because when you're doing migrations, you have to plan each and everything. You have to make sure that it works, or it will work, and if there is some problem, you need to plan the rollback, which is again it can be a pain. So there is a lot of hassle. There can be a lot of hassle, but in case you are willing to spend time, in case you are willing to plan this, you can actually move configurations and data uh, using both these apps. So the last option was to basically do syncing. So when you do syncing, it will most likely use the REST API, and it will sync the issues between two Jira instances, like using Accelerate or Backbone, but it won't really move the configuration. So again, it is something similar to CSV or project import, where you can have your data, but it won't really have the configurations. So syncing will work when you are basically looking for zero disruption for the end user. Maybe you want you don't really want to ask the users to stop using it. They can continue using the source instance, and maybe one day you will just switch, and maybe once everything is synced, you can ask all the users, okay, let us use the new system. So it will require minimum downtime, if I have to say the downtime. And of course, you have to basically make sure that your users are aware of all the customizations that will be either lost or different. You have to redo them. But the good thing is that it has some other use cases, like I talked about other use cases of project configurator and configuration manager. You can use both these apps to basically do some kind of configuration moving from one type of platform, not a platform, but let us say you have development, staging, and production environment. So you can use configuration manager and project configurator to move the configurations and do some testing before moving. Similarly, for Accelerate and Backbone, you can use both the apps for doing syncing. It can be used for migration, or it can be just used for simply linking two different instances of Jira. Maybe for some reason you want to keep the Jira instances in sync, or maybe not really the whole instance, but maybe few projects in sync. And you can definitely build your own sync or synchronization using REST API, but there is a development effort required. So again, these two apps, Accelerate and Backbone, there are other apps as well, but I'm talking about these two because I have used both of them. But these are paid apps, so if you need these features without doing any development yourself, and these are add-ons, you just need to install them in your Jira instances, and it will work quite well. You have to, of course, read the documentation, like how to use it properly, but they are not very difficult apps to use. You need to basically do some kind of a mapping of projects and issues and some of the configurations, but it is quite straightforward way to sync the issues using both of these apps. So these are different migration options that you can take a look at. And in case you are using Jira for the very first time, you have, let us say, a fresh instance of Jira without any issues, and maybe you just want to migrate issues maybe from your Excel sheet. In that case, use CSV. That really works well. Or maybe don't do any migration at all. Use a blank instance of Jira. But one thing that you should be doing from day one is make sure that your Jira customizations or your Jira configurations are standardized. So don't really create basically different configurations, thousands of custom fields. It is very easy to mess up your Jira instance, and I'll probably talk about it in a different podcast, or I'll probably make a video about it. But make sure your Jira instance is clean. Don't create unnecessary schemes. Reuse your configurations as much as you can. Let us say if you're doing software development, then in that case, create some kind of standard in the company that if there is a new project, you have to follow that kind of scheme or some sort of configurations in your Jira instance. So that is a topic for a different podcast, for a different episode. But in this podcast, I mainly wanted to talk about the migration options, and I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast. Thank you very much.